Hey folks, and welcome to another episode of Crit Hit Reviews, with your host, Arlyeon. On today's episode, I'll be talking about the review copy I received of Dead Mage's rogue-lite hack and slash, Children of Morta. Find out if I thought this title was a good bit of family fun, or if I couldn't abort this playthrough fast enough. I'm sorry. Sort of. Welcome to Mount Morta, a sacred peak hallowed to the gods, and which serves as the home to the illustrious Bergson family. Caretaking the land generation after generation, they serve as both guardians of these grounds and occasionally heroes. A role which they are once more called upon to fulfill as an ancient corruption begins to flourish across the countryside, consuming and corroding what was once familiar. Now, whilst the summary was pretty brief, the actual game has a fair amount of narrative. Rather literally, since you're accompanied by a rather chatty narrator who oversees your noble quest. It's a neat touch and one that does help to deliver a bit of dramatic oomph to the story as it unfurls, though I did find it to be a bit dense during the tutorial. Still, it dials back after that point and allows things to be presented in a more digestible form as you progress through the game. And there's a lot there, with scenes which both precede and follow the dungeons, optional vignettes which showcase some of the Bergson's home life and dynamics, and even some rather hard-hitting moments which accompany some of the game's quests and their resolutions. It's quite well done, helping to drive the central story arc forward while also providing a decent means of fleshing out the family you spend so much time playing as. And for those with a mind to read, there's a fair amount of solid lore to engage with, which you can find both in the codex as you encounter characters or journals in the dungeons. They're also the source of some pretty bleak bits of world building in the case of a few of those stories, and the scenes you walk in on when finding the journals. That said, there's a whole lot more to Children of Morta than the occasional apocalyptic log. Mechanically, it's a roguelike tasking players with both exploring and clearing out a set of randomized dungeons to progress through the game, with each new area culminating in its own distinct boss battle. The likes of which I should mention managed to muster some pretty entertaining mechanics as you progress further, and even some which started to double a bit as puzzle bosses. That said, whilst I dug those boss encounters, I found myself getting completely sidetracked by the sheer cadre of characters you end up with at your disposal, an element which plays into the game's nature as a roguelite. See, whilst you start out with only two characters to choose between at first, as you progress through the game, see certain scenes, and complete side quests, you find yourself unlocking more and more members of the Bergson family to use. Each one of them plays out in fairly distinct manners from each other, even from their initial introduction, but these changes become even more pronounced as gaining experience with these individual characters provides skill points to spend on their unique ability trees. Whether it's improving their base stats, adding new abilities for them to wield in combat, or even modifying those existing abilities, they end up with some rather interesting kits at their disposal. And given that they get to keep these improvements from dungeon to dungeon, it definitely contributes to a sense of gaining power, especially given there's a secondary system at play which helps to motivate players to try out all the different characters. See, as you level up the Bergsons, they begin to acquire passive abilities which apply to the rest of the family members as a whole. It makes dabbling between all the characters and discovering their nuances a highly rewarding endeavor, which, made me wonder if they really need to include the corruption system. Like, on a certain level, I suppose the idea that the heroes you use find themselves getting gradually weakened by exposure to the corruption needing to recuperate makes sense. But it can be a little bit punishing to find your favorite characters getting their health nerfed through the floor, especially if you're playing co-op with friends, and you'll find yourself potentially handicapping multiple characters, making the act of choosing who to use a bit more tactical just so you can maintain viable team composition. And to be fair, whilst I dug this game as a single-player endeavor, I had an absolute blast playing couch co-op with my girlfriend. I mean, yes, beyond not using the character bit, you do have a secondary option in the form of the Mysterious Egg special event quest reward, which allows you to purge corruption, But given those items also represented the sole way of respecing the skills of your characters, I didn't really want to cough them up for that, okay? That wasn't the only rogue-lite element that exists, however, given there's also the workshop and the Book of Ray. See, these elements represented more generalized upgrades to the Bergson family as you gradually acquire stat boosts from investing in gold, as well as gradual quality of life improvements such as increased golden experience gain, or improving the overall functions of other intrinsic elements of the dungeon, such as making temporary power-ups last longer, or making repeat-use consumables have shorter cooldowns. There's a lot in there to make the experience altogether more forgiving. But that's not to say it also doesn't provide options for the opposite. For instance, there's a freely selectable difficulty option for in case you're finding the game too easy or too hard. On my end, I just stuck the game on hard and figured the experience would be character building, and my girlfriend was sort of annoyed about that, but hey, here we go. Something that I might have slightly regretted when things rolled around to the game's New Game Plus mode, since not only were the enemies beefier in general, they were suddenly in larger swarms than I'd ever seen them before. Like, yes, you get brand new caps to your characters' levels and their workshops and the Book of Ray upgrades, but things escalate quickly. You'll also find yourself needing to clear the side quests you'd accomplished in the first playthrough all over again to benefit from their rewards, which can be a little bit of a hassle if you'd become fond of the utility they provided, such as gambling, or the free heal before bosses, which does mean that you get to witness the associated scenes again, and some of them are like a whole lot of heartwarming. Now, on a visual level, I do have to say that Children of Morta is altogether lovely, but one of the things I really enjoyed was the actual home you start in. As you progress through the game, the area gradually changes, whether it's due to the outcome of quests, the progression of the story, or even items you collect in the dungeon showing up around there. What's more, there's a lot of thought put into idle animations for the characters as they engage in their day-to-day life, which was neat when you discover them doing new activities. I was also pretty fond of venturing into the dungeons, if only to encounter the various areas and the themed creatures that were within them. That said, what really caught my eye the most was the detail put into the cutscenes, as a few of them stand apart in just how uncanny or vivid they are, even when compared to the lushness of the game at large. When it comes to the sound design, I was pretty fond of it overall. The soundtrack is generally pleasant to listen to, both as you mill about the Bergson house watching the family, or peruse into the deep foreboding depths of the dungeons. Honestly, the only thing that got old for me was the general sound of thwacking enemies, since their sheer number could sometimes make the crunch of weapons hitting them pretty droning. That, and how much the narrator wanted to yak at me in the intro, but I'm not gonna really beat that dead horse, especially since I was altogether fond of the narrator past that point. So, we have reached the end of this review. So let me sum all this up and say, I really dig this game. Present tense, since I'm actually still looking forward to playing more of it with my girlfriend in co-op and New Game Plus. Even after having played through it once, it's a lot of fun to play, and the way it handled the story was a lot of fun to witness. I just also really enjoyed how varied the various family members were, since it meant I always had different options for how to tackle a level or boss, especially when combining strategies with having co-op characters working together. It also actually had me super excited for the latest roadmap release, which is the new character, who's amazing in co-op, actually. Just saying, she's freaking amazing in co-op. But yeah, what I'm trying to say here is that as a whole, Children of Morta is a hit, but I actually found the game edged its way into crit hit territory if you have a friend to play it with. It's some jolly good fun, enough so that I had actually referred it to a few of my friends when they were looking for games to go and do couch co-op with friends. So yeah, there's that. Anywho, thanks for tuning in. If you agree, disagree, or just have something to say to me, feel free to comment. And for those interested in more indie reviews, developer interviews, podcasts, or our currently discontinued Monday TTRPG content, hit the subscribe button and the bell so you know when there's a new release. There's also a Discord. You can click the link in the banner or description so you can be part of our community, the Crit Hit Cauldron. And lastly, if you'd like to help support the channel, we do have a coffee running now to help supplement funds for a lovely editor. and make sure we can continue to provide quality content. Again, check the description in the banner for them links. That said, I'll catch you on the next episode of Crit Hit. Take care till then, folks.